This is our third episode trying to make sense of the Generation 6 video game market. Up to this point, one could possibly draw the conclusion that supply and demand drives the pricing of the market.
But I think there's more going on than supply and demand. The episode you are about to watch throws a wrench into that whole equation. But if supply and demand was the only thing in this equation, then it would go GameCube, Xbox, PS2. The Xbox sold 2 million more units than the GameCube. The PS2 sold 130 million more units than the Xbox. So in theory, PS2 games would be cheaper. But in today's episode, we're going to look at 10 crazy games on the PS2 that are way cheaper on the original Xbox. I think there's so much more at work here than supply and demand. I think there's something called nostalgia.
Hey everybody, I'm Chronik Spartan, and one of my favourite things to do is grabbing a good beer, kicking off my shoes, relaxing my socks, and watching one of my favourite YouTube channels, Gaming Off the Grid. Cheers.
The differences, the price gaps, the wackiness of the video game market, I think rears its ugly head most in Generation 6.
Yes.
And we focused a lot here lately on the big three, and we're going to continue to do so in today's episode, looking at PS2 games, which have been on the rise, comparing them to cheaper counterparts on the original Xbox. There's some very interesting stuff going on here.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, and I know typically games run better on the Xbox, so why are the PS2 versions more expensive? This is it's just fascinating. This whole thing is fascinating, looking up these games, but I think we just jump right in with the first game, and that's Def Jam Fight for New York, which is a fantastic wrestling game. These games are so much fun.
They are. I've always preferred Vendetta because I like it being in a ring, but this game is awesome. And if for anybody who doesn't know, these games are kind of the spawn of the development group that worked on the WWF No Mercy's, WrestleMania 2000's, WCW vs. NWO Revenge, lost their licensing, and they ended up using rappers, and not candy rappers, but like, we're spin it backwards rappers.
Which is just a cool crossover. So on the PS2, this game, complete and boxed, is $135.07. On the OG Xbox, complete and boxed, it's still expensive. Don't worry. It's $83.95. That's $50 difference.
And both these have came down quite a bit. There was probably a month or two ago, we were considering selling our Def Jam Fight for New York on the Xbox because it had peaked at like $135, and we're like, ooh, we play Vendetta a lot more.
Yeah.
We could get something retro with that.
But I think this game just in general is expensive across the board, but the PS2 version is more expensive, and the load times on the PS2 suck. So the better version, I think, is on the Xbox.
Yeah, and you know, the only thing I would maybe say on some of these comparing these two consoles would be you lose the 4 shoulder buttons when you go from PS2 to Xbox. Some games that really matter, some games it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So there is kind of, you know, a little bit to be said for the PS2. And these are all cross-platform games, again, worth noting. But in some of these comparisons we've done in the past, it's like, cross-platform games, the PS2 actually holds its own fairly well. But in this one, I think this version for the Xbox is a lot better.
And what's kind of cool about our list today is most of these games don't even have a GameCube counterpart.
Yeah,
it's just Xbox and PS2, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, well, and we kind of did that, you know, we did the GameCube version of this, and we're like, okay, we got to hold some stuff back for this PS2 episode.
But now I think we jump into the next game on our list, and that's Cold Fear. This is a horror game that's pretty scary. On the PS2, it comes in at $49.90. Which isn't too bad, complete in box. But on the OG Xbox, this game is $27.81. Here's why I think the Xbox version is better than the PS2, and it's way cheaper. So Xbox offers 720p of this game, so that automatically makes it look better. And it has quicker transitions between the rooms. So if you're playing it on the PS2, you're going to spend a lot more time going between rooms than playing the game.
Like loads and buffers and whatnot.
So if you're going to play the game, get it on Xbox.
And typically, video output is going to be stronger on the Xbox. Most of you probably know that. But price gap here is pretty wild. Coming in, 56, 57%. And honestly, though, on both consoles, a survival horror game, anything under 50 from this generation is pretty good, because you guys know how wacky the survival horror genre has gotten. We'll probably take a look at that maybe during the Halloween time. Ooh, foreshadowing there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, boxing games, always been a big fan of them, and there's actually a kind of a good one if you're a Rocky fan. You got to be a Rocky fan, I think, to really enjoy this one. But Rocky Legends. Not an expensive game at all on either console, I don't think. PS2, $22.67.
Oh, that's not bad at all for a complete in box on the PS2. But on the OG Xbox, this guy is $12.47. Almost a 60% difference.
Yeah.
And the Xbox version is technically rated higher. So why is it more expensive on the PS2? I don't know. This is another game that doesn't have a version on the GameCube.
Yep.
I just don't get it.
58% price gap.
I don't get
You
it.
can get your Rocky on the Xbox for $12. I'm just saying. A game we wanted in our collection for a long time after seeing a lot of people play it. I believe I seen Megadan29 play it, and he was telling me, dude, this game is lit. Is The Punisher.
Oh, this game is so awesome.
This game is epic. If you just like Raising Cain, The Punisher is so good.
It's so violent.
And I had always seen people play it on the PS2, so I was like, dang, it's kind of an expensive game. It kind of runs up there, in that $50 range, and it has for a long time, coming in right now like $44 or whatever. And I was just kind of scrolling through eBay, and I was like, whoa, there's an Xbox version. Let's go, because that version is $23.66.
Yes, that is a 61% difference, and the game is basically the same on both consoles. And this is another one where it's not available on the GameCube. It's probably because it's so violent, I'm guessing, because Nintendo was more family. But man, if it's the same game, I love the PS2. The PS2 is probably my favorite from this generation. I'd much rather play it on the Xbox for cheaper.
Yeah, and it's worth noting we're really honing in on prices here, obviously. A lot of these games, we own every one we've talked about thus far, but we only own it on one of the two
we
consoles.
don't have it both.
So we haven't done a direct side-by-side, but with some of these gaps, is it worth even doing that? If you get the same gist of the game, I think I said it in the last episode we did like this, I very seldom in cross-platform games have played it and felt like, you know what, I really need to get a different version. Whether I've been playing it on GameCube, PS2, or Xbox, I usually can just enjoy the game.
It's marginal at best.
Yep.
But let's move on to the next game, and that is The Suffering. This is a first and third person shooter horror game.
Yep.
So another horror game. On the PS2, this game is $44.94 complete in box. On the Xbox, $21.86. This is another game where it's only available on PS2 and Xbox, but a little fun fact, it was planned for the GameCube, but got canceled. I don't know why, probably because people were too scared, but I don't know, but still less than half.
Yeah, this game's awesome. It was developed by Midway, which Midway is kind of their swan song generation. I think they did have some games in the generation that followed, but they were really kind of in the last wave of their life cycle, and man, I miss Midway. But this game is really freaking cool. Definitely worth the $21.86. I don't know that it's cool enough to warrant paying $44.94. And a lot of these games we've talked about so far, Rocky Legends and this game, out of the ones we've talked about, we find in the wild a lot.
Yeah, all the time.
Easy to find out there. So I would just suggest if you find it on the PS2, maybe flip that bad boy.
And then you can get it cheaper.
Get it on the Xbox, you get a little extra cash, go in the, the beer pocket.
That's where we put our money.
An awesome game coming up next by Rockstar.
Yes.
And if you have read the book, watched the movie, this game is epic. It's a great co-op game. Kind of open world-esque if you're into that. Yeah, beat 'em up. The Warriors.
This is such a cool game.
This game's lit. We've only ever played this, though, on the Xbox. That's the version we have.
That's the version we have, because the PS2 version is expensive. So on the PS2, The Warriors is $44.54. On the OG Xbox, it's $21.30. That's like a 70% difference. And here's the crazy part. The PS2 version is more expensive. But if you're gonna play it on PlayStation, it's available on the PS3 store, and it's available on the PS4 store. The Xbox version is cheaper, and that's the only way you can play that. I don't know if there's backwards compatibility yet on that one. That's what's cool about the Xbox version, is some of them are backwards compatible.
Yeah.
So
some, not all.
Yeah.
But whether, it's on the, like the Punisher, I've been playing on the 360. Looks badass, through HDMI. But between the 360, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, or whatever the hell they're all calling these now, you got a good chance of hitting on some of these to be able to play them a different way, which has always been curious to me that hasn't risen the value.
Yeah, you think
of
that
Xbox games.
You think that would? That doesn't make sense. But still a fantastic game, and I'm glad we have it on the Xbox.
Survival horror. We've already talked about how games are getting crazy. Silent Hill 2, which I think a lot of people think it's just a PS2 game because the original was a PlayStation game.
Yeah, we have our version is on the PS2.
Yeah.
This game is one of the best survival horror games. It's so good. We played this last October. We streamed it. It's terrifying. So on the PS2, this game goes for $95.47 complete in box. On the OG Xbox, it's $45.63.
And unraveling the hornet's nest that is Silent Hill 2 is a bit of a conundrum because There's the regular version on PS2. There's the greatest hits version on the PS2.
And then the Xbox version is actually a modified version of the original on the PS2. I think it's called Silent Hill 2 Restless Dreams. So it's kind of confusing.
You know, we've done a lot of research on it. I would say the needle probably leans a little bit more towards the PS2 greatest hits version being kind of the definitive version. But there's a lot of folks who have played it on Xbox and say, you know, the game is just fine. So I think we're really splitting hairs on the differences of the games. I'm sure there's going to be somebody that's like, no, the Xbox. And there will be somebody that's like, no, it's the PS2 greatest hits version. Just a lot to unravel. But the price gap in these offerings makes you wonder, why would you just not get it on the Xbox?
I will say, if you're comparing the original on the PS2 to the Xbox version does probably have a leg to stand on because it has an extra ending. But if you get the greatest hits version, that also has an extra ending. So it's kind of confusing. If you're going to get it on the PS2, I would recommend getting the greatest hits version. It is slightly more expensive than the original on the PS2, but the Xbox version does just fine.
And this game is so dependent, in my opinion, on the story.
Yeah, so that's what matters.
I don't think anybody's playing Silent Hill. I know sure as hell we weren't during last October, being like, dude, the visuals on this game are just mind-blowing. No, it's all about the hunting for stuff.
It's all about the terrifying...
Yeah, figuring out your path.
Yeah.
I don't think you lose that luster. Playing a version that's maybe marginally a little bit worse. It does feel good on the PS2, though, and it just, for some reason, in my, stupid brain, I've always thought it was just a PS2 game.
Now let's move on to a compilation game. These games are so much fun. Taito Legends, if I said that right. On the PS2, this game, complete in box, is $19.99, which isn't too bad at all. I think we have this on the PS2.
Wrong! We got it on the Xbox, buddy!
This is a fantastic arcade compilation of the Taito games, which is so cool. But on PS2, this game, complete box, is $19.99. Not too bad. On the OG Xbox, it's $9.19. And the Xbox version is rated higher. Not by much, but it is. But also, for a compilation of arcade games, can you really tell the difference?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was a reason that we really wanted this. Or maybe it was the Legends 2 pack.
Legends 2 has some really cool stuff on it.
Yeah, I can't remember. But nonetheless, we did a video on, I think, the PS2 and all of its arcade,
like the
whatever.
Midway classics and
but
stuff.
we happen to have this one on the Xbox. They're both really good. The second one is better, but I would say if they, which I don't even know, did they put that out on Xbox? I don't think they did.
I think that might be a PS2 exclusive.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. We didn't do our research on the second one, but
nonetheless, a lot cheaper. And I think these Taito Legends games are must-own games, just like the Midway Treasures games.
Yeah, and
they're such a good way to play arcade games on a budget.
And they're arcade games. I think I already said that, but are you really going to be able to tell the difference? So might as well get the cheaper version so you can enjoy the game.
You're not playing Space Invaders going, oh man,
The frame rate.
this would look a lot better on something different. No, you don't do that. Yeah.
Now let's move on to another terrifying horror game, Obscure. This game is awesome because it offers co-op.
Yep.
It's really fun.
And if you like shitty teen horror movies, you'll like this.
Yeah, it's really fun. On the PS2, this game, complete in box, is $275. I get that it's a great game, offers co-op, which was nice, because Resident Evil back then didn't offer co-op, so this was kind of like,
Yeah, it wasn't until Res 5 where you gotta
so you could do with your partner. But on the Xbox, complete in box, Obscure, $94.19. PS2, almost $300. Xbox, less than $100.
Damn near 100% gap. We're
What?
like 97.94%.
That's stupid. It's basically the same game.
This is another one. We only own it on the Xbox. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Didn't finish the game thinking, I wonder if there's more out there. But could it perform better? It performs like a Gen 6 game. I mean, it just does.
What else do you want?
Yeah. It's like shitty teen horror done well into a video game setting. Scary. Great co-op. It's got to be, something about how many were sold on PS2, or maybe they pulled it off the shelves. None of that really matters to me. We get that in the comments. Well, this happened. Okay. I get it. Still wouldn't pay it.
Yeah.
Don't give a shit. Don't care if it was out for 2 days. Don't care if it's out for 2 weeks. Don't care if it's out for 2 months. What? Don't care if it's out for 2 years. What? I want the cheapest version of the game, and if it plays better, that's all I care about, and that's the bottom line.
We have one more game that we want to talk about, and this game is over 100% difference, which is just mind-blowing.
And we love the series.
But you're going to have to wait to find out what game that is till after we talk about this beer. That's what we call a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah, we got a Toppling Goliath beer.
Yes, Dolphin Sparkles, which I saw this at the store and I was like, okay.
Here we go.
Whatever. It's a double IPA. I love Toppling Goliath. They're one of my favorites. This can art is just, very colorful.
Yeah, I loved it in the store because usually when you find a Toppling Goliath beer, you're usually like, dude! You came around the corner with it and you're like...
I was like hiding.
Like half smile, you're like... I was like, oh.
Oh, that's what you picked out?
But, dude, this is a great IPA. And I think you're better to talk about it than me because you're the IPA connoisseur.
So, this is a double IPA, so it's a lot smoother than like a regular IPA. And there is a sweetness to this. I don't know if that's the sparkles from the dolphins making it like sugary or sweeter. It's got a nice sweetness to it that's really good. And I know we've mentioned before when we were Toppling Goliath beers that like their IPAs kind of have that similar taste. This one is different.
Yeah, it is. It is a very chunky boy, though. There's a lot of meat
very
in there.
thick, very smooth, very delicious. This is a really good beer.
Yeah, I like it.
I don't know why they came up with the name
I don't either.
The branding, but it's funny.
It is funny. And I'm just kind of sitting here the whole time thinking, like, what exactly is a dolphin sparkle? Like, what is that?
Like, like when you're dolphin watching and they go up in the air and then there's that twinkle in their eye, that means they're about to have a kid.
No,
that's what it means. It's the dolphin sparkle.
What are baby dolphins called? Kittens?
Kittens.
All right.
Dolphin kittens.
Dolphin kittens. All right. I like this beer. I think it's 8.5 to 9 out of 10 on the IPA.
This is a really, because it's not super aggressive, not super hoppy. It's just very well balanced, very delicious.
Yeah.
But now we got to move on to a series that I freaking love. Konami classic Castlevania Curse of Darkness. We have ours on the Xbox.
Yep. Always have, yeah.
On the PS2 complete in box, this game is $81.65. For a Castlevania game, you're like, oh, that's kind of pricey, but not terrible. It's definitely not obscure level of prices. On the Xbox, this game is $23.21. I don't get why that difference is so insane. And here's the crazy part. So this is on PS2 and Xbox across the globe. You can get it everywhere. But in Japan, you can only get this game on PS2. So you think, since the Xbox version isn't available in Japan, you think that version would be higher. I don't understand. I don't get it. Whatever. Great game.
Yeah, these 3D Castlevania games kind of get shit on sometimes. I like these games. I actually like the ones on the PS3 as well. The price gap is curious, and I have noticed that on Konami games from this generation, that it tends to be more expensive for them on the PS2. So maybe that's where they were developed and then ported it over.
I don't know.
Maybe
exactly.
some things were lost in translation. This is another tale of this is the only version of this game I've ever had.
Yeah,
so
that's what we know.
That's what I know. You'd have to do a lot to convince me to pay 111% more. You'd have to do a hell of a lot to get me to be like, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, it's very curious. And it's important to note, this does not apply universally across PlayStation 2 to Xbox games because there are some outliers or anomalies. The Fatal Frame series, I think across the board, tends to be more expensive on Xbox.
Yes, the Psychonaut games are more expensive on Xbox. And then like Teen Titans, which is a fun, simple game, is more expensive on Xbox.
Like, way more expensive. Like, I think it might be like close to $100 on the Xbox, and it's like pretty cheap on PS2.
Why?
So
I don't know. We didn't look into that much, but I'm just telling, like, this generation is crazy, man.
This type of stuff we're talking about in these episodes are a good general rule of thumb. Again, it doesn't apply universally across the PS2 and Xbox landscape, but typically you just want to look and see, is it cheaper on the Xbox? Typically, you're not giving up on the performance side. Maybe sometimes you are, just ever so slightly. And then that's up to you to figure out, is it worth the price gap? I know for us, cheapskates that we are, we're going with the cheapest version. That's just what we're going to do.
It's just stupid. I know we didn't have that many crazy differences in our past couple when we compared it to the GameCube, because the GameCube's going crazy right now.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but even then, man, it's still crazy, the difference, and I just don't get it. This is a fascinating thing we're doing, this mini-series. I'm learning a lot about Gen 6, and, like, I just don't... It's fascinating. It's confusing, but it's fascinating.
Well, I always love doing this, because if I buy a game at a store, which I'd say probably half our collections from stores, half our collections from out in the wild, maybe otherwise. But this game, now it's $23 on the Xbox. I got it for $9.99.
That's freaking... He has his receipt.
Pretty wild.
Is there a date on there?
It's a little worn out. Looks like 2017.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, fun.
That's freaking awesome.
That's just what we do for fun. No big deal. You know, just look at receipts.
Just look at receipts.
Hang out,
and
talk,
smell them.
have beer, smell them, roll in them, whatever it may be. But hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I gotta call this a mini series now because this is the third one, and we've got one or two more of these planned.
Yeah.
It's been kind of fun, and I hope it's helping somebody out there make better buying decisions and maybe take off the nostalgia goggles, set them aside, and say, do I really need that game on PS2 or GameCube? Or if I could buy 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different games for the price of going to the Xbox? Should I do that? Read your own mail. We appreciate you tuning in and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Off the Grid. Of the development group that worked on the No Mercy WrestleMania 2000's WCW vs. NWA Revenge.
Wrestling games.
Lost in Wrestling.
If supply and demand was the only thing driving these prices, then it would go GameCube, Xbox, PS2. Because the GameCube only sold 2 million more units than the Xbox.
You ready? Today we can... The discrepancies, the differences, the wackiness in the video game market. The differences, the wackiness, the craziness of the video game market.
Damn it, Margaret.
Margaret Thatcher. This is our third episode where we and sit back, relax, pour yourself a Dolphin Sparkle if you care to, and look...
And lick it.
God dang it. And let's take a look at some of these wacky price gaps between the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox.
That was it.
We get her?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. Now we get to drink some beer.
Hell yeah.
This is my lips. This is our third episode looking at the